of these technologies relies on more than just innovation. It demands robust infrastructure, and when we talk about infrastructure, we're talking about grid capacity and transportation networks to water resources and skilled human capital as well. The session we're going into will assess where Africa stands today and what's needed to create the enabling conditions for SMRs and micro-reactors to thrive. Before we dive into that conversation, I request that we watch a short video to set the stage.
Innovation alone is not enough. To bring new energy technologies to life, we must build the systems that make them possible. The successful deployment of advanced nuclear energy depends on more than the reactor. It depends on what surrounds it: electric grids, water systems, transportation networks, a skilled workforce. Africa's infrastructure must be ready, not only to host the technology, but to sustain it.
The promotion goes to a higher level, such as SADC energy ministers, where once they adopt, then they promote, they encourage the members to use the regional master plan as the input into their national master plan. I think if we can have a coordination approach like that, it could be bottom up or from top to down. Thank you.
At the country level, Mr. Arnold, how do we deal with this coordination and effective planning issues between generation and transmission systems?
Yes, thank you very much. So at the country level, we have different stakeholders that we are dealing with. I'll mention specifically in Rwanda. We have a line ministry, the Ministry of Infrastructure, that's really coordinating, is responsible for setting up policies, and all the plans that we have, we follow them. So for us, it's been going very well because they are also aligned at the regional level. We are working with the East African Power Pool, and so far, I would say, even though we are still at the development phases, but we see some progress, and there was a huge effort that was put into setting up different committees, setting up training personnel that are going different categories, operators, and all of them, so that we can be ready for this integration.
Yes, I'll take this at the macroeconomic side. The real economic development of Africa will be attained only if we have an integrated development of mine, energy, transformative industry, and trade. The SMR offer the possibility to have this developed where we have the mine, because we don't need the source of water and other conditions that the large plants require. So by developing where the mine is, because when it's come to transform, they say, okay, we don't have enough energy, we are taking the raw material. You have the SMR where you have the mining, a credit-worthy off-taker, and the energy used make the product with clean sources add value in the world market. So the rest of energy now go to the grid. So it's a stabilization of grid and also the possibility to develop our mine with source of clean energy. And that gives the possibility for mining company to be combined with energy. This will reinforce the grid, because after you are planning the industry, you plan the development of grid, and there you have now your clean energy on the grid, providing that this stabilization of the grid will help to integrate other variable renewable energy. So there again, the nuclear energy is one of the transition energy apart of the gas, but we are talking about nuclear here. The role of nuclear for the transition is critical in that sense, that we combine with mining energy and mining industry and trade.
From the interventions in this round, you can see potential solution and potential opportunity. Solution in terms of synchronizing effective planning, system planning, not isolated generation planning or isolated grid infrastructure planning. It's very, very critical that we have a systemic look at these issues and have a synchronized planning regime at regional and national level. But the opportunity that came out was through this program for infrastructure development for Africa. Today, it prioritizes 3 components of the energy sector for priority investment because of its regional component. One is a solar park in Niger, a solar investment. Second, a whole series of hydroelectric projects across the continent. Third, cross-border integrating transmission line investment are in the priority that Dr. Robert mentioned at the 69 high priority projects between now and 2030. Post 2030, it means we have an opportunity to conceptualize and potentially develop a regional nuclear project that involves perhaps multiple countries, then that would accelerate energy integration as well. So let's keep that opportunity open, and thank you for those contributions. Now, let me come to South African power pool, because currently that is the only power pool we have with a nuclear facility operating inside of it. And issues of reliability of infrastructure, security and safe operation of the infrastructure, especially transmission system, national and regional, come into question. Now, because the summit is about innovation not only in terms of technology, but innovation in terms of policy, innovation in terms of market design, South African power pool is also at a relatively advanced stage in creating what we call regional ancillary markets, because those ancillary services are so critical and foundational for a safe and secure operation of our grid system. Now, tell us a little bit more how those kind of market designs, harmonization of ancillary codes and regulations, potentially inviting investment to come in ancillary services. Not only nuclear being a generation source, but maybe nuclear is also a grid stabilizing factor. How do you see this kind of developments, and how these policy innovations would advance the integration of nuclear technology into national and regional electricity systems?
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad that you have already touched based on the development of market mechanism, because I think we need to develop market mechanisms that enable the efficient power trading across borders, factoring the unique characteristic of the SMR generation. So at SAP, we are, like as you correctly said, we are exploring, we are developing so many markets depending on what technologies that are there. We have recently developed a balancing market. We also in a mission of developing the ancillary service market, as well as carbon pricing market. So those technologies, those interventions in terms of markets can help accelerate and promote investments in SMRs. Also because the SMRs also comes with the components of, it can be used as a, it can come to factor in the energy storage components. Like for instance, it can be used, we are deploying so many renewable energy, and we know that it comes with the intermittence issues. So the deployment of SMRs, since it comes as a base load, it can help with the storage component part.
Thank you for that. So advancements in storage technology, integration of storage capacity should go a long way in terms of not only integrating renewables, but also being useful for integration of nuclear technologies. Thank you for that input. Engineer Azarak from Central African Power Pool, you mentioned earlier, there tends to be fear about nuclear technology. There's a perception, some form of a challenge in terms of advancing nuclear in Central African Power Pool region. How do you see the role of the Central African Power Pool in really dispelling some of that fear, in communicating transparent information, and more importantly, in supporting countries in increasing readiness for the uptake of SMRs in the Central African Power Pool?
Merci beaucoup. Avant toute chose, je dirais que l'Afrique centrale, en créant le pôle énergie de l'Afrique centrale, a essentiellement basé sa vision le moment de l'hydroélectricité. Ensuite, il est arrivé qu'on pense un peu aux autres sources d'énergie renouvelable, telles que la biomasse, la bioénergie en Afrique centrale, c'est important, le solaire, l'éolien. Au niveau du pôle, nous avons une quarantaine de projets. Cette quarantaine de projets dans lesquels il n'y a aucune source d'énergie nucléaire. Je pense que les projets que nous avons couvrent pratiquement tous les pays. S'agissant de la peur que les gens ont au niveau de l'Afrique centrale, je pense que le seul travail à faire, c'est la sensibilisation. Sensibilisation au niveau des médias, au niveau des télés, sensibilisation même au niveau des décideurs, au niveau de la société, à tous les niveaux, je dirais. Nos quarantaine de projets, il y a une trentaine de projets intégrateurs prioritaires. C'est des grands projets qui couvrent plusieurs pays. Je citerai le projet Tchad-Cameroun, par exemple, Inga Cabinda Pointe-Noire, qui couvre l'Angola, la RDC et le Congo. Il y a le projet Congo-Gabon, il y a le projet Guinée équatoriale Gabon. Ici même, au niveau du Rwanda, du Burundi et de la RDC, il y a plusieurs projets qui sont là. Et ces projets vont permettre d'équilibrer le réseau de façon générale. J'ajoute simplement que nous sommes en train d'élaborer un plan directeur qui va nous mettre en place l'ossature du développement du secteur électrique au niveau de l'Afrique centrale. Je crois que le travail est en train d'être fait dans ce sens. Outre cela, nous avons le code d'exploitation des réseaux interconnectés. Nous avons, entre autres, le code du marché de l'électricité. Je disais tantôt que nous sommes en train de préparer un peu l'arrivée de cette nouvelle technologie, bien que nous ne l'ayons pas encore intégrée dans nos programmes. Par exemple, le programme 2024-2028, on n'en parle pas, mais je crois que le travail est fait pour que, quand il va arriver, quand les nouvelles capacités vont arriver, qu'il n'y ait pas de problème.
In general, as we know, the way the African electricity market is designed as a mostly vertically integrated system, the role of national utilities is absolutely essential, not only in bringing in technology, but also in designing its distribution for end use and consumption. From where you see it, how do you see the readiness of African utilities in terms of uptake of this technology, and in terms of their overall viability going forward as a vital part of the energy system?
The role that, critical role that we are playing is human capital development. While the country is on process, on negotiation, establishing MOU, and with the potential supplier, we are working on the human capital such that, you know that in our DNA was the training of engineers at our high school of engineers. For 20 years, have trained many people, but now for new technology, we launched since 2016 the African Network of Center of Excellence in Electricity, where we already trained for the past 8 years, 9,000 people. The second phase stapled that we need to be prepared to the new technology. So as for now, we are establishing the 2025-2030 program, where the training of new technology includes the nuclear. And for this, we have, fortunately, among the 5 countries in process, we have our Center of Excellence in 4 of them: Kenya, Morocco, Ghana, and Nigeria have one each have our center of excellence. So for the inclusion of those training, I started some contact. I met the market intelligence, US intelligence on nuclear lastly in April for the celebration 80 years of Rosatom. I met the CEO in March, and next week I'm going to Russia. I'll be in China in September. All those to bring all these actors to provide the adequate package of training to reinforce capacity, because when the country will be ready, we have a lot of engineers out of Africa today because the continent were not developing and exploiting any asset. So the diaspora also is called to join the knowledge people on the continent to be able to manage the nuclear asset when it will be operational. So this preparation is focused on human capital development and readiness.
Thank you. Let's switch gear from hard infrastructure to how we finance and develop our infrastructure. Because what we have seen in the last 15 years is that a lot of investment interest in the electricity market in Africa is going to generation for many reasons, encouraging especially private investment on grid infrastructure development. Regional interconnection is exceedingly difficult. If you put this in a broader context, where last year, for example, the energy sector across the spectrum saw $3 trillion in global investment for the first time ever. However, if you look at the regional dimension of where is that money going to, you see that Africa captured just 3%. Now, couple that with global climate commitments. For example, COP28, there was a statement saying we need to triple nuclear capacity because of decarbonization requirement. And that policy measure alone would require $150 billion to be invested in nuclear projects across the world. So, Dr. Lissing, considering ECS work in this area of public finance, private finance, and how can we make infrastructure outside of generation, the grid and other infrastructure, investable so we can attract more and more investment to flow, and we accelerate this grid development that we are saying is so critical for the uptake of technologies, including nuclear?
Well, I think pretty much across the value chain, whether it's generation, transmission, or distribution, I think the constraints to private sector investment are there. And I think you mentioned the work that we have done at ECA, which is to say that the regulatory environment is critical to attract the private sector, and this is valid for transmission as well. First, the regulatory environment has to be open, which means that the governments would have to show their commitment to energy development in general, not just nuclear, but energy development in general, which means that they should have the necessary policies, they should not have the necessary target, and this will signal to the private sector that the government is committed to this. But also the institutions have to be in place. And in this case, we are talking about having an independent regulator. I think this is critical to minimize the perception of regulatory risk that may exist for countries. And also there's the issue of attractiveness. How attractive is the market to the private sector? Here we're talking about things like cost-effective tariff, even tariffs for transmission should be there. We should also be more open in our environment. I recently, ECA, you were involved, Johannes, in Kenya, where we were working with them to pretty much open the market to have multiple off-takers. And this is linked to what we were discussing a lot yesterday in terms of coupling generation and transmission of nuclear electricity with mining. So it's a joint development of electricity and mining. I think someone mentioned yesterday, why is it that the United Arab Emirates was able to attract a lot of private sector finance, and it was clear because the demand was there in terms of data centers for artificial intelligence, heavy industry, steel, cement, and so we should be innovative in terms of making sure that the off-taker would be there. But now talking again about, and I will end here, attracting public or private finance. There is the whole perception of risk in investing in Africa. The credit rating of African countries that is generally poor, and this is debatable, and that's why Africa is working with African countries to try to see how to address this negative credit rating, which increases the cost of capital and makes it more expensive to invest on the continent. And let me end by saying that the degree of readiness of our system also is important to attract the private sector. So if the private sector is involved in generating energy, including nuclear, how easy it is to feed that into the existing grid. What is the grid code and things like that. So there are a whole gamut of factors that would attract private sector or not to the grid infrastructure space.
Thank you very much. We are almost running out of time. However, it will be a miss to conclude this conversation without touching upon one, what he called soft infrastructure that was discussed yesterday, trust. As we integrate, as we create our regional markets, the minute we see an energy crisis, there's a tendency to localize. There's a tendency to go to bilateral arrangements instead of multilateral, trustworthy regional markets. And that is the invisible soft infrastructure that's so critical for the development and establishment of a regional market. Yesterday, the Honorable Minister from Ghana said, we need these regional systems. We want to have trust, but we also have a mechanism to enforce that trust. 30 seconds each, since we're running out of time. How do we strengthen trust in regional infrastructure, integrated systems, and regional electricity markets to drive uptake of technology? I'll start with Engineer Abel.
I think that we should make sure that every country have the integrated resource discourse planning, that you see if your interest is only to rely on your resources or the regional integration can help to lower your operation cost. So the trust we are talking about is based on the regional economic law. So we cannot organize the system if we don't have concrete regional law, even in this domain of trade, so that is the conditions are respected. When there are common plant or infrastructure for a country, the percentage are set. The dispatching point should respect, and any other diversion should be authorized by hierarchy. So the organization of the system bring the secure that trust.
General Zarak, one action to build trust regionally, one action, 20 seconds.
Je crois qu'il est important aussi, pour qu'on ait notre crédibilité, il est important de prendre l'exemple de l'Éthiopie. Il faut que les Africains soient capables, ils ont les moyens pour financer leurs propres projets. On ne peut pas tout attendre des bailleurs de fonds. Cet effort doit être fait. L'Éthiopie l'a fait. Aujourd'hui, la Renaissance est opérationnelle.
Dr. Lee Singh, the time is going down, 15 seconds.
Okay, I think I would say having a payment mechanism for trade between two countries. I think that will allay some of the fears.
Engineer.
Yeah, we need to launch initiatives to involve local communities in planning and decision-making process at that stage. We also need to, so that we have that buy-in. And also we need to utilize the existence of the current pool plants, current power pools. Let's utilize them, and then perhaps if we can give more mandate to the power pool to make sure that we enforce some of these initiatives.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmad, you have
Thank
15
you,
seconds.
Thank you, Ernest. I think my colleagues have said it all, but I believe under the leadership of the power pools, I think we can also think about the centers of excellency, where we can have exchange programs. And with that, when people study together, I mean, that bond comes and the trust is developed. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There you have it. This is the closing of our very insightful discussion. I thank all the distinguished panelists for their contribution. Please join me in appreciating them.
Thank you very much to the incredible panelists. That was quite insightful, leaving us with a lot of thoughts, a lot of knowledge. Thank you so much. And Johannes, great moderation. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be joined shortly by their excellencies who will be present for the session that is kicking off in a few minutes. Please, let's get set to receive them.